What is up, you guys? So I thought I'd just put together a little taster of what's happened in Chess Bootcamp Live just in the last week to give everyone who isn't yet a member of Chess Bootcamp Live to a bit of an insight into what goes on, what to expect. Okay, so the deal is, so we do 4 sessions a week. We've got 4 different bands. I'll take you through them. We'll look at, say, a clip of about 10 minutes or so from each one. And just sit back and enjoy and think, maybe is this something that you might appreciate doing yourself. But let's dive straight in. So we're going to start with Christina's group. So Christina runs the foundation group, and this is the sub 750 range. If your rapid rating is sub 750 or around there, then Christina's group is the one that's aimed specifically at you, although all members are welcome to join all sessions as well. So in this one, actually, Christina with her Tiger Team group did something quite different, which is interesting, where the whole group then took on the coach in a live game. Needless to say, Christina emerged victorious out of this, but she's rated almost 1600 anyway. But it proved to be a very, very interesting experience for the team.
All right, so good game, guys. I really didn't think it was terrible. You had I saw a lot of good ideas going through here. So let's just chat about it. So you guys tell me first, how did you feel? How was that game for you? Did you think it was going really well at some point, or did you think that it wasn't going well the whole time? What did you think?
You had us on the back foot all the time. That was the trouble. We couldn't find a.
You were definitely controlling the tempo. Like we never felt like we were getting an advantage, but it didn't feel terrible. Like I remember when if I played somebody rated you, I'd just be whipped from the start.
Yeah. So, what did you think, Jim?
I got frustrated because I don't remember seeing you leave anything undefended. I mean, that's one thing Ben always checks for is what's he call it, increase, and there was nothing.
Increase, yeah. Yeah. So when there's no obvious captures, you just got to go for a positional play and just making your own position better, right? So yeah, that was something. I mean, I was talking to myself here the whole time, and it seemed crazy, but I was looking at all my pieces, and while I was waiting for you guys to move, I was gold fishing around, just looking at different things. Whenever you did make a move, I would just reevaluate everything again, see if anything has changed. So it definitely takes a lot of patience, and I will say I don't play like that all the time. But yeah, I try to be really careful and not letting any of my pieces be loose or be hanging, right? But that's not the only way to gain an advantage, right? So that's not the only way to get a winning position by taking pieces, which is something that I know that you get a little tunnel vision into when you're a little bit lower rated, is you're looking for pieces that you can just take, right? But the advantage could be, more development than your opponent, or the advantage can be, a really strong position that you can't penetrate, right? Like, so there was no way for you guys to get into my position at all. And that's kind of where you guys were stuck. It's not that I was just taking pieces left and right. It's just that I had a really good fortress setup that, you guys weren't able to get into. So let's go through it really quick.
I just want to say there was one pawn or one bishop move where they just said move it backward, and I moved it the wrong way. So that was my fault.
Oh, okay. Was it a mouse slip or?
No, they just said move it backward, and I could have gone left or right. I think I went left, and I should have gone right.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you when it comes up.
No worries. Okay, so let's do this without the engine for right now. I'll do it from your guys' perspective. Okay, so who noticed, besides looking at the computer or whatever, who noticed what opening we were in?
Oh, Steve did. He said it was the Vienna gambit.
Vienna. Yeah. So that starts with E4, E5. This is the classic Vienna position here. So this knight coming out to C3 instead of, the normal knight coming out to F3. So this immediately puts you into a Vienna game. So when the knight goes here for black, that immediately puts you in position for the Vienna gambit. So me pushing this pawn here with the idea of challenging this pawn. If black were to take, I would just push this pawn forward. Does this look familiar?
Yep.
So that's the idea behind the Vienna gambit. So that's what I did. And then you guys actually played the best move in this position. So this is the move that black is supposed to make to challenge the gambit. So black is challenging the other center pawn. If I were to just take or something like that, it turns into a whole different game. So the thing that I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to capture here. And then what black is supposed to do is they capture down this way with the knight. Right.
Yeah, that's where we missed.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, so I didn't want to test you all on how much you knew the theory of an opening, but just to get you one or two moves deeper, this is what black is supposed to do here. And then black can develop the queen, or black can recapture with the knight or something like that. And then when pawn recaptures, you have an equal pawn position in the middle. And that diffuses all of the things that white is trying to do with the Vienna in the beginning. So that didn't happen. So you guys decided to push this pawn, which is very interesting, right? So it puts a big question to the position, because we could just take all day and equally go down the lines like this. And it comes out looking really wacky, right? Like whoever decides to stop taking will have a bishop on an open file and things like that. So I thought a little bit about that, and I was like, do I want to go down that route? Do I want to do that? I don't know, but it looked like taking the knight was a good idea. So I did that one capture to see what was going to happen. And then tell me why you guys played queen out to f6.
We just didn't want to bust up our pawn structure on like the fourth move of the game.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. So not wanting to move a pawn here, especially when the center pawn has already left its position, right? It's not making any sort of pawn chain. I like that idea, but what if I took here? What would be the disadvantage of that?
Well,
now we can defend our center pawn with the bishop.
Yeah, but you just take it with the bishop, you'd be fine.
Yeah, right. So always look for moves when you come down like this. If you can take that piece off while developing another piece, that makes it really not a bad thing at all, right? So what's that, Richard?
I would have taken your knight. I was the minority.
Okay. Yeah, so taking the knight, I think, would have given you equal material at least, right? Because I had just captured your knight, which is what makes this such an interesting line. It's that we can keep equally taking each other's pieces, right? And so let's go down that a little bit. So say instead of queen takes, you guys decided to capture here. What if I went a move further, right, and captured here? Now you guys can capture with the bishop, and now you have this nice open bishop on this diagonal. You have one piece developed, you're ready to castle. I'm still blocked in here with everything here, and I have no pieces out on the board. Right?
We missed there. Richard, you were right. So
give Richard all the praise for being right.
Yeah.
Right. And so
one time I was right.
And so here, I might decide to recapture this pawn finally. I'm not going to take it with this pawn, right? Who can tell me why taking with this pawn is a bad idea?
Not towards the center.
Not towards the center is true, but what's the bigger thing here if you take with this pawn?
Oh, well, it exposes your queen to ours.
Yeah, exposes the queen, right? And then on the next turn, you could take the queen. So let's just go through that.
Yeah, and then you lose the right to castle.
And now I can't castle. I can't castle. You still can. You have this really nice dark squared bishop. So moral of the story is don't be afraid of letting one more piece go if it comes with development of the recapture, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So I was really thinking, dang, what if they do take my knight here? Am I going to do this? Because do I want to better their position, right? This totally betters your position by letting you recapture with a bishop here. So I was thinking, do I push this pawn to solidify things in the center? But then, some other recaptures could go on. Should I just stop it there and recapture this one? There's a lot to think about. So I think, that was something I would have done instead, is I would have kept at least taken the equal material of the knight and then continued the game on this way. So bringing the queen out, isn't terrible. It doesn't recapture the material, but it does have, now you have another piece that's developed, and with the right combination of things, you may be looking at some sort of scholar's mate maybe later in the future. However, so for this turn for me, I have this idea here, and who can tell me why it doesn't work? I almost did this, and it would have been a huge blunder. So this move looks like really good, right? Because it looks at the queen, and it also looks at the c7 square, which comes with a fork, right? That looks super good, but tell me why it doesn't work.
Okay.
Well, it's easy enough to diffuse by moving the queen back over.
Okay, so I'm thinking about moving the queen too, but not back.
So you're looking at doing like the wayward queen attack out of the Vienna.
Yeah, so look at this. So this would be a very premature attack for me, right? It looks really, really good, and maybe a player who doesn't have experience with this sort of thing or whatever may not see the move, but the move here is queen to h4 check, right? Now we're looking at this and this. If I block with this pawn, if I block with this pawn, say I just do that, queen gets to capture here, and now the queen is looking at 2 pieces.
Yeah.
This would have been a huge blunder for me. And I almost did it because I was like, oh, that looks really good. Looks really aggressive. Maybe they
Well,
but
it is that kind of that King's Gambit, attack idea, because you're a move behind on getting that knight out. So
yeah, this one here, right?
Yeah.
So, and this happens in the Vienna as well, that after all the stuff happens in the middle, you have to get this knight out to protect the h4 square. So in the Vienna, this is always a big weakness, right? So if you ever find yourself in a Vienna game against somebody, always take a look at this diagonal and take a look if you have opportunities on the h4 square.
Okay, next up we've got my group, which is the Breakthrough group. So Breakthrough is specifically for people in the 750 to 1000 range or thereabouts. And so while in the foundation group we're looking very much at the absolute foundational principles of chess, in the Breakthrough group we're starting to drill a lot more tactics. So in recent weeks we've been going over a different kind of tactic each week using a lot of real world puzzles, but this week I thought I'd mix it up by playing a new kind of game with the guys for some light relief called Brilliant or Blunder. So we're going to work through these. We'll see how far we get. Or once we've gone through them all, then we might take on do a bot game and apply our newfound tactical abilities to some things. So we'll work through in order again today, if you guys want to do that. And so we'll start with Miko. So everyone can unmute. I mean, feel free to chip in. This is all for fun. Okay, now, interesting times. So, Miko, this is the game called Blunder or Brilliant, okay? And I'm going to show you the move. The move here, so black has just captured white's bishop here on a4, and white now plays rook captures knight. So, blunder or brilliant? Over to you. And by the way, we're going to start at the easier end, and we're going to move up as we go. So I'll try and hide the... Right, so rook takes knight. What do you see?
Well, apparently the knight's hanging, but is it brilliant?
And you can always ask for help from the other guys as well. There's several of us on live.
Queen can take the pawn.
This one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant.
Okay, any other thoughts? Or should we see how it goes?
Because
Queen takes pawn f2.
Okay, and if queen
Puts
takes
king in check.
okay, then what?
I don't think we take the pawn on f2 with the queen. I think we'd rather take it with the knight. And then we're threatening mate.
That's not a check. Queen would move.
We're threatening to capture the queen with a discovered check, yeah?
And we're also threatening a smothered mate as well.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. But yeah, that's that kind of famous Morphy thing, isn't it? So if takes, I don't know, the king can't move there, but this is actually a blunder. Okay. The next move actually is, and this is a forced mate in 2. Okay. What black played here?
Oh, queen takes, knight takes.
Queen takes f2, right? Queen is defended by the knight. There's only one legal move for white. Has to play king h1, and then
yeah.
Take the rook.
And it's a back rank mate. And that wouldn't have been possible if this rook was still on a1.
No. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the easy level, right? Next
All
up,
right.
Rick, you're in the hot seat. Okay. Now, I think you may have seen this one before. Who's winning? It's white to play. White is up a bishop and 2 pawns. King takes h2 as the move. Brilliant or blunder? You're muted.
It'll be mate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, well, what do you see? What do you see? How would it be made?
Rook to the H file.
Yeah, absolutely. Rook there, and the kings are in opposition. The king's guarding all these 3 squares, and we are in mate. Okay. I don't know if you were trying to comment, Rick, but you were muted at the time.
Yeah, well, I was muted, and I would have come in late anyway. So whoever got that for me, thank you very much in advance.
Hey, well, I can give you another one if you like. This is also.
Oh, no. Go to somebody else.
I think we're going to go again.
I think so.
Okay. The move here is bishop c1. Okay. And okay, Hugh, you're up. Bishop c1.
Okay, bishop c1. I think that's a blunder.
Why?
Because black can just push his rook down to e1, and the rook on a1 can't take it because the bishop's in the way.
Is a beautiful back rank mate. Absolutely. Right. These could be puzzles on chess.com as well.
Yeah.
Right then, mate. Joseph, you're up. Okay. And the next move is knight takes d4. Brilliant or blunder?
So, let's see if the bishop comes down. Let's see if knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes.
And we've won a pawn. And we're still threatening mate on here.
But what would the queen do? Queen would come down. Come down to e2. Knight takes. Bishop takes. Bishop takes. What could my queen do?
So we're up a pawn and still threatening mate. So that queen it has to defend that. And that's the mistake that I made in the game. I thought that the queen was bound to keep defending that because of the checkmate threat.
But the king could take the queen then, right?
Yeah, if there's no bishop, yeah. And also the queen's still defending that pawn from here. But the problem is this. So we're looking at bishop takes and then, carry on from there. But black doesn't have to take the knight with the bishop.
With the queen. So the bishop with the queen.
Okay. Black did actually take the knight with the bishop, which was also a blunder.
Blunder.
As it happens. But what black could have done, just queen takes bishop. Right? And then we've got 2 attackers on that. Black's just won a piece. The checkmate has disappeared.
Yeah.
Our bishop, right? So that's a very, very common issue where we kind of get tramlined into thinking one particular way. Oh, but what if this? And you miss a whole alternative line. You have to think, what's my opponent's best move here? Knight takes, queen takes.
See, what I do is I react to what just happened to me.
Mm.
So my instinct is, okay, he did something to me. I want to get him back. And that's not good. As my games show.
I know. It's
That was a good move.
It's so hard to do.
That's a good move. Yeah.
Next up. Okay, we're going to get slightly funkier here. Right. So move 20 black. Queen takes a3. Okay, so John Sutton, you are up, my friend. And how do we feel about pawn takes queen?
I don't know that I'm ready for funky, Ben, but pawn takes queen.
So is queen takes pawn a blunder, or is it brilliant?
Queen takes pawn is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, another Antipodean, eh?
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
What's that?
Where are you in the world?
I'm in Philly, but I spent most of my life in Perth.
Okay, right. Fantastic. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's because what happens if pawn takes queen?
And the bishop, pawn takes queen. Then the
It's not what happened in the game, but check this out.
Bishop comes to,
Checkmate.
right, two bishops, yeah.
We're covering all of these squares. Yeah. Fortunately, that's not what I played in the game. I didn't take the queen. I took the rook instead. And how did the game end? Black still won. The black still won. Next up is James and the intermediate group. So the intermediate group is for people with a rating around 1,000 to 1,250. And what we're starting to look at that level is maybe getting beyond kind of one move tactics, identifying the basic tactical patterns, and starting to introduce more positional play. And James and then Craig, who does the advanced group, will do some more preparation in terms of actually delivering the content that they want to do in form of a lecture with principles, so that you can really understand them. And this one, this session in particular from James, is all about the concept of what is a sacrifice and when and how to sacrifice.
Yeah, so today we're covering when to sacrifice pieces. So last week we looked at tactical trickery. We covered a few tactical terms, which I know a lot of you would have been familiar with, but we went a bit more in depth, looking at some common tactics, and especially the ones where I saw you were going wrong in your own games. And then we played a collaborative game in a tactical position and won versus, I think it was a 1600 bot. And these are the following puzzles that I recommended last week. So what is the sacrifice? It's where we give up material to achieve a strategic advantage. So before we get into the sacrifices themselves, something I learned from Gotham Chess is the rule of +2. So we always want, when we're going for a big attack, we want 2 more attackers than our opponent has defenders. So we want 3 attackers for their 1 defender, for example. And in this position in the top right, how many defenders would you say black has there?
Defending which piece specifically?
I mean, if I'm thinking in terms of a checkmate,
defending the king,
I might say 1. If I'm looking at the dark square in front of the king, but I'm not sure.
I mean, the dark square in front and the light square to the right of the king are both only defended by the king.
And does the king count as a defender?
As long as there's only 1 attacker. I'm not quite sure how to say that.
There's no difference. I mean, the knight could come over, but I'd say right now there's no defenders of the king. But yeah, like you said, Paul, it does depend which square we're looking at. The square on the right is, even the knight can't defend it. So we're going to just look at a few classical sacrificial ideas, which you've probably heard of, but the Greek gift sacrifice is where we have, using the rule of +2, even when we sacrifice the bishop. So first move would be bishop takes the pawn in the corner here. And then we come in with the knight with check on the king, should the king take the bishop there. And then we come in with the queen. And it's almost unstoppable, mate, I think, in most of these situations. So queen to that square on the right, and yeah, king slides up and we mate on this square here. So the fishing pole. Yeah, sorry again. So it's where our knight comes out to this square on g4, and white tries to kick the knight with this h3 move, and we respond with h5. That's the fishing pole situation. And the debate here is that they take the knight, and it leads to two amazing things for black. So we recapture the pawn here, which opens up the rook, and the pawn there is an absolute thorn in white's side, in that the white knight is then under attack with this pawn on g4. So if white wants to keep his knight, he has to, retreat, let's say, to e1. And then, black plays like queen h4, for example, and the rook and queen are lined up on this h file, and it can just be unstoppable, mate, a lot of the time. Now, white can try and play the move f3, pawn to f3, to create an escape square for the king there. And in that case, we have the horrible move. So we've got a pawn on g4 here. We've got the move g3, so that the pawn now cuts off this escape square on f2. And then it's just queen and rook on the h file, and there's no escape for the king. So that, like we see, that's another situation where, even though we've sacrificed a piece, the knight, we've still got +2 there. We've got, once the queen comes in, we've got queen and rook on an open file, and it's going to give us some good attacking chances.
So don't take the knight.
Yeah, yeah. If you're from white's point of view, yeah, don't take the knight. And actually, this is more of a trap than a solid position. If white doesn't take the knight here, black's position is a little bit clunky, and it's not so clear how black is actually attacking. And should white get sufficiently developed, they can actually try and take the knight and survive. But right now, white's coordination is just not good enough to allow that, to allow them to sort of greedily take the knight. So when to sacrifice? So obviously, if it leads to checkmate, we do it then. If sometimes we can sort of temporarily sacrifice a piece if we can see a tactic which allows us to win material in the future. And then a third one, which isn't really talked about, which I've created a position to demonstrate in a second, is where we can have a positional chokehold. So most sacrifices tend to be like tactical in nature, but there are some positional ones. So my tip of the week to gain Neela, and I saw this in some of your games when I went through them, if sort of sacrifice is not working out correctly. So if you cannot concretely visualize, either the checkmate or a big gain of material or a big chokehold, if you can't visualize it, then just don't do the sacrifice. I know they're fun, guys. I know, but sometimes if you do want to really just focus on rating like that, you should probably play it safe in these sorts of positions. So it was some of the feedback where people wanted rules of thumb. So I've made a table here, when to sacrifice, when not to. So like I've spoke about, when we've got +2 attackers, we tend to be good and we tend to be able to go for the sacrifice. If it leads to our opponent's king being wide open afterwards. But just a caveat to that, our opponent's king could be wide open, but we need pieces on the board to actually attack it. You know, if we open up their king too late into the end game, it can actually be advantageous for them in that their king can have a clear path to the center of the board to achieve that sort of end game king dominance. So sacrifice when we are more developed and or coordinated. Now, I know this seems a bit abstract, so I've got a position here to demonstrate. So there's a big difference between being developed and being coordinated. Now, is black developed here, guys?
Technically, yeah. Perhaps not very well, but yeah.
Yeah, so not to call Ben out or anything, but in Ben's videos, he always says about, you know, I've got so many development points, and I think castles is worth 2 points, or each piece is worth 1 point, something like that. And while that is a real good rule of thumb, it doesn't account for coordination. So, like you alluded to, Paul, black is not coordinated, and chess, of course, being based on the wartime of ancient empires. You know, I've got this mountain range picture here, and I think, in my head anyway, black's pawn chain here is like a mountain range, and the emperor is at the other side of the mountain to all his troops. So pretty bad strategically from black here.
And last up for this quick summary taster, we've got Craig's group. Now, Craig is our 2000 rated at Rapid coach, and Craig takes the class at 1250 and above. So this is actually the class that I sit in on and I attend every week in order to learn. And quite honestly, my rating has bounced back about 200 rating points since I started studying with Craig, and that's how it's all supposed to work. So Craig will be looking at a more kind of formalized training program. And this one in particular, the topic of that session was pawn storms, and you're about to see a game in which Craig managed to effect an effective pawn storm against quite a well-known YouTube grandmaster.
I'm going to show you another example of another pawn storm. This is actually a game against Daniel Naroditsky, who's like basically one of the top GMs on chess.com. He's usually sort of top 3 by rating.
You won this one, right, Craig?
This is a game I managed to win. So I managed to beat Daniel, and I've played him like 4 or 5 times. I've lost 4, but I've won 1. And this is the only one I won, which was also a pawn storm, opposite side castles. So this is... I usually, like all of my top games against high-rated players, have been in the open Sicilian opposite side castles pawn storm thing, because I feel in that opening it's not necessarily about your tactical knowledge, because it's almost like the plan is written and it's just a case of whose attack will come first. So you can kind of get like your own kind of boost in rating because you're playing out a predefined plan, if you like. So this isn't a Najdorf like the previous example, but it is still an open Sicilian, opposite side castles, and we'll still go through where mistakes were made. So this is also just another blitz game, but nevertheless, and this is early on, so I was like 1500 rated at this time, so it was like 2 years ago. But P4, open Sicilian, kind of normal stuff here. And this is a sort of starting point, if you like, almost identical to the previous game. A couple of slight differences with like the Najdorf was played in the previous game. But again, knowing that we are in opposite side castles, my sort of default plan is already just pawn storm. I've got no other sort of, I mean, technically we've got a pawn here that we can grab, a free pawn. But that's not the plan I went with, which is also not the plan that the engine wanted to go with either. This pawn isn't actually going to decide the game. It's going to be this pawn storm idea, the mutual pawn storm that we go with. So how would we start the pawn storm? And again, the moves are here, but try and avoid looking here if you can. because there's basically two main ways to do it. You could G3, G4, H4, H3, or would it be another move, maybe developing a piece first to connect rooks? Like, how would you propose that you start this plan?
I mean, I guess personally, I'd probably go H3, G4.
H3 to start G4. Yep. Okay, cool. Anyone else get any ideas or thoughts? So we all kind of like the H3 G4 idea, which is fine. I mean, the evaluation will fluctuate slightly. I'm actually going to turn the engine off, so I don't want that being too leading us down one way or another. But there's also an argument for playing G4, by the way, just to show you why. Even though it's a free pawn, again, it's just with this general plan of allowing your rook to come and basically immediately attack the king. So you could look at playing moves like just giving up your material straight away. And again, I still plan to show the position where it could be this position, it could be any position, but I'm almost certain that if I just set this up on an analysis board and dragged these two pawns off the board, it would just say white is completely crushing, like plus 10 immediately, because these two pawns are out the way and allowing up the open lines. So we don't have to necessarily try and protect the pawns, but in some cases we will. I actually played H4 immediately in this game. Again, this is also a pawn sacrifice because the bishop can just take for, well, I actually can't take for free because the knight's here, but it's still, if to be honest, like if this knight was pinned, I would still have played that to give it up. But in either case, that's how I decided to start my attack. How do you think black reacted to this? And what do you think black would play? What kind of, again, keeping in the spirit of this type of game, how do you think black played from here?
Bishop takes A2 here is probably not advisable because you can trap the bishop with B3.
Yep.
It's like Queen A5 to me looks really tempting.
Mm-hmm. Queen A5. I mean, it would invite a queen exchange as well, but I mean that doesn't necessarily.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can quite easily play to simplify and play an endgame as well. Black continued with Rook C8. So the immediate difference we can see between this game and the previous game, which was played by someone obviously a lot lower rated, is that we're not trying to react we're not basically reacting to what we're doing. We're immediately trying to set up our pieces. We'll probably even play queen here and try and go for some things. Like knight out, you can't take if the queen's here because obviously there'll be some tactics to start bringing pieces down. So the first thing obviously is clear is that black is trying to set up their own attack and not necessarily react to ours. So I play G4, which again is this sort of pawn sacrifice that I spoke about. And black played A5. So again, not taking the free material, that's point number one, and also not reacting to the incoming attack, which is point number two. And point number three is that they continued with their own attack, which is the way you're obviously trying to play here. So you're not getting too distracted because as soon as we start taking material, then again, whether it's this rook or this rook, but we're starting to open up lines to the king, which will accelerate our attack. So Naroditsky played A5. I played G5. And here, what do you think black played? Because now they're forced to react because their piece is under attack.
Bishop E7, retreat.
Bishop E7. Yeah, exactly. So we're obviously not going to open up a file here. And hopefully black will have enough time, or I guess black is hoping for enough time to continue with their own attack. So they obviously retreat. I take, and black to play here. What do you think is the best move here?
G6.
G6.
Yeah, I was looking G6.
G6. Excellent. Any alternative thought versus G6? It's interestingly, it's not the move that was played in the game.
Does knight B4 work in this position and the previous position?
And what's the idea with knight b4?
Well, attack the queen, take c2 with the rook.
Excellent. Yeah, knight b4 does work. And again, point number 1 again is we're not getting distracted with the incoming attack. We're more concerned about counter-attacking. And that's probably like the biggest difference you see between the higher rated players and the lower rated players, is this focus on the task at hand. This obvious threat.
H takes G7, you just move the rook and you've got a human shield in front of the king. Or if H6, H7, you play King H8 and the same thing. You're actually using your opponent's pawn as a barrier.
Yeah, that another well said point, which is going to be the second sort of takeaway. I continued here, and the best move would actually be just to move the rook, because these pawns are actually, as Ben said, like a shield. So you wouldn't want to necessarily just gobble up the pawn, because it might make you vulnerable. Sometimes you can still grab it and get away with it, especially if your opponent is maybe not developed enough to immediately come in. There might be time to gobble it and then come back and maybe move. But in this case, Naroditsky actually played king takes pawn. And this is actually the first mistake he made in the game. And this is what kind of started the game shifting to me. Now, there are still a couple of swing moments where it goes back and forth. But this is the first time where the evaluation just swings to white. And it's just because you're now opening up the king, which the engine said rook e8. And obviously this is also a blitz game, so not expecting everyone to be have an endless amount of time to think. But I am also surprised why that move was played, because it seems very natural just to move the rook away. And it's like, okay, you can deal with this in like 4 moves time. Like 4 moves might be too late with this counter attack with these pieces coming down. But in this game, he played king takes g7. I played rook g1 check, king back. Does it matter if the king goes back here or here? Does anyone get any strong thoughts on that, or do you think it doesn't make any difference? Or does one look safer than the other, or one look more dangerous than the other?
Well, H7 is vulnerable to the knight G5.
That's one thing, yeah. So it gets out of the check, I guess would be one thing. And I guess just generally speaking, it at least creates the illusion that it's safer to retreat back to H8. H8 actually gave me a new plan. So white to play here, and maybe try and find a move, a tactic, or a plan. How do you think white continued from here? Bearing in mind, it's connected with what are we trying to achieve here? We're obviously trying to attack the king.
Bob saying bishop h3.
Bishop h.
Does that just drop the bishop? I'm looking at knight g5.
G5, okay.
Generally moving in to open things up.
Yeah.
Bishop G5?
Sorry?
Bishop G5?
Bishop D5.
G5.
D5. Ah, okay, yeah.
G.
Protected by the queen and pawn.
Yeah, and obviously if we can open up or even fall up. Yeah, that looks like a good move as well.
I just can't stop looking at C2, and I feel like we have to defend it.
How would we defend that? So maybe just playing C3 ourselves?
Yes.
Or even, I guess, King B1 as well. Could be a moment where we have to defend.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to attack, maybe like bishop h6.
Bishop h6, just attack the rook.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I think the problem with that is it would then allow this, and we're basically losing the queen for a rook and a knight, and maybe that's a bit too much. The move I played was actually the moment where it was basically enough to win the game almost, which was actually bishop b6. And can anyone maybe give me their thoughts on that? What does that do?
Opens up queen h6.
Queen h6 is actually checkmate.
Hmm.
So it's a kind of diversion where if the queen takes, it's obviously just mate. The rook cuts off all of this. So that's all I'm in. I've just got tunnel vision on Queen h6 mate. So Naroditsky obviously sees all of that. So he plays rook c2 anyway. I'm pretty much forced to take the rook. But it turns out that Naroditsky actually has to take the bishop, because if they take the knight, I take the queen, and the knight and the bishop is under attack, so they lose a piece. That makes sense. So after knight takes, I take them, and then if they take me, I take the knight, win the knight, and if they escape with the knight, I win the bishop. So they basically had to take here, and I might just up a piece. Basically, I just move out, and that's basically it. The game's pretty much, there's now, if I turn on the evaluation, it's like mate, force mate in like 4 moves or something. So he just begins sacking all of his material, just to basically try and, I think maybe we're both low in time, so he's maybe trying to flag, but there's nothing that could be done there. And I was fortunate enough to pick up a win here. Again, just pretty much because of this opposite side castle pawn storm idea. But again, even the top players will still make small mistakes. And I guess the main critical mistake here, which surprises everyone, is just the king takes. That was the decisive. If he didn't play that, there's no chance I would have won that one.
So there you go, guys. There's a little bit of a taster of the very, very different kinds of sessions that we get every week on Chess Bootcamp Live. So if you want to give it a try out, it's $49 a month. Go along to chessbootcamp.club. Go ahead and sign up. You'll get all the information you need. You'll get all the invitations and calendar links and links to the webinars and everything, so you can come along and join and take part and learn along with some other people around your rating. It'd be great to study along with you guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.